flip-flop at that time.
You're getting good at it.
Hey, practice helps. Good evening. Tonight we're going to be learning Maseches Yoma, Daf Yomi Beis and Daf Lamed to catch up, and then we'll be we're going to get close to the bottom of Lamed and Beis. We'll stop about 3/4 of the way down, and then we will call it a night. We're starting tonight on the bottom of Chav Testament Aleph, about 7 lines or so, 8 lines from the bottom, at the 2 dots. And the 2 dots references our Mishnah, which is at the very beginning of this new parak, which is called the parak of Amar Lahem HaMemuna. And in this first Mishnah, it speaks about someone who brought a korban tamid shel shachar a little bit too early. So if you look at the Mishnah on Kav Chesed Aleph for just a moment, it says there that if you bring it too early, someone did this too early, and what they did is they had to shachtu as a tamid v'otziu lebeis hasreif, and they had to throw it out. So then back to where we are in Chav Testament Aleph, this is where the Gemara picks up 8 lines from the bottom of the 2 dots, shachtu as a tamid emas. When was this? Was this during the year, or was it on Yom Kippur? If you want to tell me that the korban tamid that our Mishnah is discussing is throughout the year, well, throughout the year, the Kohen Gadol wasn't the one to bring it, yet our Mishnah is speaking about a Kohen Gadol. Lo saged olav Kohen Gadol. Why couldn't it have been someone who wasn't the Kohen Gadol? It doesn't have to be a Kohen Gadol, yet our Mishnah seems to indicate that it is. Ella, if you want to say it's Yoma Kippurim, where we know the Kohen Gadol is going to be doing the korbanos that day, that's fine. But then you have an astrological problem or a cosmological problem or whatever the right term is, I don't know. Moar halavana mi'ika. You would not have the moon in the eastern part of the sky to even make the mistake that our Mishnah spoke about. That how could you ever mix up that? We spoke about this on the other day on Sunday night about how do you mix up the sun's spreading light and the moon's narrow light. So the moon wasn't even there. So says the Gemara, you misunderstood the first 2 parts of the Mishnah. Here's really how to understand it. 5 lines from the bottom of Testament Aleph. Hachi Kamar, Yoma Kippurim, and on Yom Kippur, Kikamar Barak Barkai, when the person on the roof went up and he saw that the sky was becoming somewhat lit. So then, Horidu Kohen Gadol Lebeis HaTfilah. You're connecting the 2 parts of the Mishnah the wrong way. It was just going to tell you that the Kohen Gadol has to then go to the mikvah. But the ratio of the Mishnah was really talking about year-round and a non-Kohen Gadol, just a fact on the ground. Why do we send them up to the roof to make sure that the korban tamid is brought at the right time with any Kohen throughout the year? Second part of the Mishnah, by the way, when he's on the roof, when he says that the sun's up on Yom Kippur, that's when the Kohen Gadol goes down to the mikvah to get ready. And starting here, 4 lines from the bottom, this will consume the next amud or so of Gemara until the 2 dots toward the end of the page. Let us learn this sugya now. Tani Avua de Rabbi Avin. We'll say this name a couple of times tonight, so let's just keep it in at least our short-term memory banks, preferably long-term. And what does he say? Lo zub l'vadam. Not only do we say this, not only do we say what? Not only do we say that we burn the korban tamid if it's brought too early, ella af malikas ofu kmitzas mincha balayla titaref. Even the following 2 cases, similar to the korban tamid shel shachar that's brought too early, these get burned as well. What are the 2 cases? One is malikas ha'of, where a bird was killed by the nail of the kohen, a specific procedure. We'll learn about it in Shas. And the second was a kmitzas mincha, when you take a handful of flour, a kmitz of mincha, to bring for the korban mincha. So both of those get burned. So the Gemara on the bottom line of Chav Testament Aleph doesn't understand this. Why? These 2 things are not the same. You're comparing malikas ha'of, you're comparing the olas ha'of to flour. Asks the Gemara, Bishlama olas ha'of my dehavahav. I understand the animal's dead already. You killed it with malika. Okay, you can't, there's no resuscitation for a chicken. We're not stitching things back up. The animal's dead. Fine, I understand. Ela komet is turning to the top of Chav Testament Beis. When it comes to komet, it's just flour. Nehadra v'nehadra v'nikmitza b'yamama. Okay. So the case was presented that you brought the kmitza for the mincha at night, and you're not allowed to do that. Okay, I got it. But now that you did it incorrectly, but instead of just saying that you should burn it, put it back in the pile. The flour is hard to make. Yeah, the flour they were using was very fine flour. Took a long time. They had to make it great. Go put the flour back in the bin. Why are we not putting the flour back? Why are we burning it? So answers the Gemara, Hu tani la v'hu amar la. He asked the question and he answered the question. As mentioned, this is Avua de Rabbi Avin. He's an Amora. We'll see soon. I mean, in general, it's good to know who's talking, but we'll see soon that his status as an Amora is going to become very important. So why is it that he said that the flour that was brought in error at the night of, right? It's being brought in error at night because the korban mincha is not brought at night. So you took the flour at night. Why does it have to be burned? Why can't that flour be returned to the container that holds the flour? So answers the Gemara, This is a very important idea. Afilu shelo bizmano, right? So korban mincha is not meant to be brought at night. Afilu shelo bizmano. If you bring a korban mincha, you take the kmitza for the mincha at night and you separate it from the flour container. You do your kmitza as a kohen and you move it into a kli sharis. Instantly, it becomes kodesh, even though you did it at the wrong time. So therefore, You did the korban mincha at night, the kmitza for the mincha at night, which you were not supposed to do. And you took the flour and you put it on a kli. Sharis instantly becomes kadosh, and now you can't put it back because it's kadosh, and the rest of the initial container of flour is not. Says the Gemara, not so fast. Third line, Chav Tetzim Beis. Meisvi, hold on one second. We have a Mishnah in Tmura that reads as follows: Ze aklal. If you have a korban that should be brought in the day, then yes, when it touches a kli sharis, it will become kodesh. And if you have a procedure that's supposed to be done at night, an avoda that's supposed to be done at night, then yes, when the contents touch a kli sharis, it will become kodesh. And a third category, if you have a procedure, an avoda that can be done both during the day and at night, then kadosh ben b'yom uvein b'layla. End of the brisa in Maseches Tmura. So then the Gemara says, Katani Mihas, which always means look back a couple of lines because I'm about to ask you a question. Katani Mihas, however, look in this brisa and see what it taught us. It said, Kol hakari bayom kadosh bayom in balayla lo. What does this brisa say? When is it that if an item touches a kli shares that it becomes kodesh? That's only if the procedure was done in its right time. At the top of the page, what was the answer that Bar Avuha gave? He said, once you take the kmitza, the flour for the mincha, and you put it in a kli shares, it becomes kodesh. Asks the Gemara, that's not true. Because the Brisa Maseches Tmura writes that when does it become Kodesh? Only if it's done at the right time. So our Mishnah, which is speaking about the mincha, which was done at night, our case that's brought on the bottom of Chav Tetzim Aleph, says that if you do the Korban Mincha, the Kmitza at night, which is the wrong time, Tisaref, you have to burn it because it's Kodesh. This Brisa says it's not Kodesh. B'yom, it says B'yom in Balayla lo. It only becomes Kodesh if it's done during the day, but not at night. The answer is the Gemara, a compromise answer. As we say in the learning world, a pshara. This is a middle of the road approach. Here's what the Gemara says, 1/3 of the way down Chav Tetzim Beis. Dilma, Eino kadosh li karev, aval kadosh li pasel. Okay, this is like half holy, right? It's holy, it's not holy enough to be brought behakrava, a maskin. So if you do it in that brisa, number 2, which says that b'yom in balayla lo, that when we say that if let's say the korban mincha is brought during the day, yes, that's where there's holiness, but if it's brought at night, then no. So that brisa, what it means is that, yeah, it's not enough to bring it to hakrava, but it's enough to separate it from the initial pack of flour in order to make it puzzle to put back in the flour. So it's half holy, as it were. So that's how the Gemara answers this. It asks the Gemara yet again, hold on one second. Masiv Rav Zera. Rav Zera asks as follows. Sider et halechem. Here too, we are talking about a source in the Tanoim. This is the Brisa and Maseches Menachos. Sider et halechem ve'es habazichin achar haShabbos. We know that typically speaking, the lechem hapanim was switched out on Shabbos. And if you did it after Shabbos, that's what the Gemara wants to know. If you took the lechem and you took the bazichin, the frankincense, and you put it on after Shabbos, so then it won't be, by the time you get to next Shabbos, it will not have been a week. So then the halacha is ve'iktir tzabazichin b'Shabbos, and then the upcoming Shabbos you try to do whatever you do with the frankincense. The halacha is that the lechem apanim are psula. So it says the Gemara as follows: Ketad Yasef. What should you then do with the showbreads? What should you do with the lechem apanim and with the frankincense? Says the Gemara, no problem. Yanichena l'Shabbos haba. Leave it up for another week. You're right. If you put it on after Shabbos, then it will not have been up for 7 days, and it's psula. I understand. So what is the Gemara's recommendation? Leave it. Just leave it for a week, and then it will have been up for 13 days. You put it up on Saturday night, and then you left it until through one Shabbos up to the next Shabbos, 13 days. At least you exceeded your 7 days. So the Gemara's recommendation is if you only put it up on Saturday night, then this upcoming Shabbos, it hasn't been 7 days. Let it be. Just let it stay. To ask the Gemara, why? Why? It should be like you said earlier, this half kedusha. It should be that it's puzzle enough. Once you separated it, it should be puzzle enough. And more poignantly is that once you hit nighttime of that night, then it's mamish going to be a problem. That's not a big problem. So the Gemara doesn't understand the recommendation of our Gemara, which is to say that the korban mincha, which was done at night, the kmitza was done balayla, that it should be considered to be burnt. So answers the Gemara a little more than halfway down. Amar Rava, manda kamosiv, shafir kamosiv. You who asked the kasha, that's a great question. You did a great job. Rava is just highlighting the brilliance of the question of Rav Zera. So says the Gemara, it's only a good question if you have a misunderstanding, because what it seems like right now is that the line that we saw at the bottom of Chav Tetzim Aleph in the name of Avuha Bar Avin is that he's an Amora, and now he has a brisa that Rav Zera quotes that disagrees with him. What did Avin say? Is it Avuha de Rabbi Avin, the father of Avin? What did he say? Avod Rabbi Avin said that if you do a kmitzas mincha at night, which is the wrong time, it has to be burned. Even amora. But we have a brisa that we just saw that says you can keep it all week, it's not problematic at all. So you have a brisa against an amora. Says the Gemara, no, you don't. 12 lines, less, 10 lines from the bottom. The line at the bottom of the previous page, this sugya that we've been talking about, if you do the kmitza of a mincha at night and it should be burned, that's not the sheet of Avud Rabbi Avin. He's quoting from a brisa too. And therefore, we have one brisa against another. We have our Mishnah then, or our brisa that Avuha bar Avin quotes, which says that the korban mincha which is done at night is tisarev. And then we have this new case of the lechem apanim, of the bazichin, where we say you can leave it out. So answers the Gemara, v'kasavar. Now you have a brisa against the brisa. So answers the Gemara, v'kasavar, laila ein mechutzar zman, yom mechutzar zman. So laila, a reference to the korban mincha, ein mechutzar zman. At night, there's no such thing as being outside of your time frame. You can create that kedusha. But yom mechutzar zman, and this is talking about the bazichin. And what? It was the wrong day. But so they're both the wrong day. But Lila is halachically the wrong day. But the problem is that it was done at night. So you can't even use it for tomorrow because it's ein mechutzar zman. The timing is not going to stop the problems of psul. So that's what the Gemara says. So then asks the Gemara, fine, I understand your distinction between the case of Avuha and the case of Reb Zera, between the Bryce and the Mishnah that each of them are relying upon. But what I don't understand is that when it comes to the lechem apanim, you have a real problem. Kimati beishimsha tikdosh v'tzivsol. According to you who say that Yom is mechutzar zman, so okay, fine, but then what happens that night? Night's going to hit, and night is ein mechutzar zman, and then everything should be problematic yet again. Ravina, don't worry, shekadam v'silku, they took it away before nightfall, and therefore everything was safe. Very good answer, says the Gemara. In contrast to this answer number 2, they actually took it out. They actually didn't take it out before dark. Because since they set this up the wrong way, says the Gemara, crazy line, it's like a monkey did it. It's a total zero. The activity that you did, which was wrong, was a zero. And therefore you get puzzle now, it's a zero. You put the lechem apanim out at the wrong time. The monkey might as well have done it, right? So therefore, how does this play in with all the other things? What about the kmitzas mincha? Okay, that was at night. But that's how the Gemara answers. To wrap up this little piece of the Gemara, is that we had a stira between two Tanaic sources, each then quoted by an Amora. We had the case at the beginning of this sugya where the kmitzas mincha was done at night. That was the case that was being spoken about by Avuha. Then we had the case of the lechem apanim and the bazichin that were put up on the wrong day after Shabbos. That was the case of Reb Zera. How do we answer them? We answered them as discussed in the Gemara, that Laila is ein mechutzar zman and Yom is mechutzar zman. And don't worry about down the road, because when you put it up in the first place, it was a Maseches. That was the mice of a monkey. It's interesting to note that in the halachos of Netilas Yadayim, we do rely on that. We allow for it to be a Maseches. Even if a kof were to wash your hands, 1, 2, you could, let's say you trained a monkey to do that. Let's talk about a more practical example. Let's say you walk up to a sink that is electronic, not on Shabbos, of course, and you put your hands under. That's Maseches, right? You're causing it, but there's an external thing that's happening here. So maybe that's a little more complicated, because when it comes to Netilas Yadayim, we have this principle called koach gavra. Is that koach gavra? Is that not? I've asked Rabbanim over the years, if you have running water, can you stick your hand in the stream of water, twice for each hand? Does that count? So Rabbi Gross from Shai said years ago, 10 years ago, he told me, he's like, yeah, it's really not such a good idea. If you don't have a cup, so then you should turn the water on, off, and then on, off, and then again, switch hands, on, off, and on, off. Okay. But here, the Maseches was problematic. We're 3 lines from the bottom of Chav Testament Beis. Let's continue. Zeh HaKlal, we said at the end of our Mishnah, Haya b'mikdash, that if he had to go to the bathroom to kavim gedolim, then he had to go to the mikvah, and if it was just urine, then he would then have to do kiddush adayim v'raglayim. This is a bathroom sugya. Sorry for those who don't like it. That's what the Gemara is going to deal with now. Bishlama raglayim, I understand why when it comes to urine, why you have to wash your raglayim. We said that by urination that he has to do kiddush adayim v'raglayim. I understand raglayim. Sometimes when a person goes to the bathroom, mishum nitzotzo, so there can just be a little bit of urine that gets on the person's feet, on their shoes. Eliyadayim, my time. But why then do you have to wash your hands? Again, if there's urine, I understand you have to wash your hands if your hands get dirty. But if they don't, then they don't. The Amar Rabbi Abba Zoso Meres mitzvah l'shafshef, that if in fact there is something on your feet, that there's urine on one's feet after urination, then there's a mitzvah l'shafshef to clean off your feet or your shoes with your hands to make sure that there is no urine there. Why was that such a big deal? Says the Gemara, was a very important idea actually, because Messiah the Rabbi Ami, the Amar Rabbi Ami, Asar la'adam sheyetze b'nitzotzos she'al gabe raglav. A person is not allowed to walk in public with nitzotzos, with the splatterings of urine that are on a person's shoes, and with an unbelievable implication. Check this out. She'al gabe raglav. Why? Because it looks like he has a serious deformity in his anatomy, and therefore, when there's urination, it doesn't have like a healthy stream, and therefore, it looks like he's not able to urinate. And if he can't urinate, then he can't procreate properly. And then umotzi lazal banav shehem mamzerim. Wow, it's such a strong domino effect of saying that we're concerned about mamzerus because a person has urine on their shoes, but that's a concern. That was a concern. So therefore, it's mitzvah l'shavshev on the top two words of the Gemara in the name of Rebbe Abba. That's why we have to do kiddush yadayim v'raglaim. That was our question. I understand raglaim nitzotzos, but why do you have to wash your hands as well? Because there's a mitzvah to clean off your feet as well if there's urine on your feet after urinating, because you have to make sure you don't look like a krus shavcha, that the results of which would then be improper urination, which implies the inability for tashmish hamita, which therefore means that if you have children and your wife is the one who bore those children, that there must have been another father. That's mamzerus. So that's what the Gemara says. Next sugya, Amar Rav Papa, Tzoa b'mekoma, asar likros kriyashma. If a person has tzoa at that part of their body where it exits the body, the halacha is you're not allowed to say kriyashma. Hey chidami, idin nireis pshita. What's the case? If it's visible, okay, of course you're not allowed to. Everybody knows that. If there's anything visible of tzoa, you're not allowed to daven in front of it. And either lo nireis, and if it's not visible, lo nitna Torah l'malachei asharis. What are you, a navi? You don't know you can't know everything. You can't. That's not possible. So if there's a tiniest speck of tzoa, people say Shema all the time. You have to just make sure your body's clean. You're not have to be perfect. So it has to be good. So it says the Gemara, Lo tzricha. What case are we talking about where Rav Papa is teaching us this case that tzoa b'makom is asur likros? It says the Gemara, Lo tzricha de yoshev v'nires, o made ve'enu nires. That it depends on how his body is positioned. That if he's sitting down and the tzoa is visible, and then when he stands up, the tzoa is not visible, that's the chiddush of Rav Papa, that still it's asur to say Kriya Shema. Asks the Gemara, Ma'ishna mitzvah al bisaro. Well, how is this any different than someone who has tzoa on a different part of their body? To Itmar, the Amoraim, Itmar is always Amora. The Itmar, the Amoraim, speak about the following: tzoa al bisaro, o shahaya yada beveis hakise. Let's say that a person has a tzoa on a part of their body, or their hand is in the beis hakise. Machlokes Amoraim, Rav Huna Amar mutar likros Kriya Shema. One shita says that it's mutar to do so. The Mefarshim explained that if let's say that there's on a person's leg, whatever, you are holding your baby and all of a sudden you have a tzoa on your leg. So as long as it's covered, so Rav Huna is of the opinion that it's mutter. Rav Chizda says, Amar asr likros Kriya Shema. Critical Rashi here, otherwise we could not understand this Gemara. Take a look at Rashi, 6 lines down. Dibur hamaskil of Rav Chizda Amar asr. Remember the case we're talking about is where there's tzoa al basaro, somewhere on their body. So it says, Rashi explaining Rav Chizda, why does he say it's asr? Mishum kol atzmosai tomarna, because all of the limbs of your body have to be ra'ui to give praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Taima mishum kol atzmosai, aval mishum zohamatz hareach, but because it may not smell good, lo. Evikasha le Rav Papa mitarbayu, and Rav Papa has a double challenge, which is that your case, Rav Papa, of tzoa b'makoma, that it's in that part of the body where it exits the body, that's an irrelevant factor. The Amoraim already discussed this in Rav Papa. I think he didn't live much later, if at all, but still the case was already discussed. So therefore, Rav Papa, what is your case? It says the Gemara, Bimakoma nafish zuama. When the tzoa is in the makom where it leaves the body, so then nafish zuama, so then it has a more intense smell. Shelo bimakoma lo nafish zuama. And therefore, if it's on another part of the body, the cases are different. That's why Rav Papa had to articulate his case, even though the Amoraim already discussed a similar case. The cases are not identical. 1/3 of the way down, Daf Lamed Amud Aleph. Let's continue. Tana Rabbanan halacha besuda. Let us learn a particular halacha about being at a meal. Adam yotze lahashtin mayim. If a person has to get up to go to the washroom for urination, notel yado achas v'nichnas. He has to wash one hand before he comes back into the room. So that's what the Gemara says. Diber im chaver v'hiflig. But let's say when you left the table, you talked to your friend for a long time. Notel shtei yado v'nichnas. You have to wash both hands. And when he washes his hands as he returns from the Suda, from this lengthier conversation, you should not walk back in having washed your hands outside, you should wash your hands inside so everyone can see that you're washing your hands, because you don't want people to think that you didn't wash your hands. Ella, what should he do? Nichnas v'yoshev b'makom, should come back to the table. V'notel shtei yadav, he should wash both of his hands, and that's how everyone will know. Machzor atafiach al ha'orchen, and then he should hand the natal, he should hand the washing cup to all the other guests in case they want to wash their hands. And Amar Rav Chizda, when is this halacha true that you have to wash your hands inside the room as you return from where you went? He says, that's only true if you're at the end of the meal. It was customary that at the end of the meals, they would drink more. I think the Rambam writes this in Hilchos Midos, that you should be drinking liquids at the end of your meal. My cousin does this, or he did this in the past, at least. I don't know if he still does. I have to ask him. But he told me that the Gra quotes this, and it's based on the Rambam, that you eat your whole meal and then drink at the end. Apparently, I don't know if it's a medical thing. I don't know how it works, but there is such a sheet. Anyways, it was customary at the time to drink after the meal. So he's finished eating. He's going to come back in. He's going to drink wine. Under those circumstances, you should wash your hands. But if you're coming back and you're in the middle of the meal, you can wash your hands wherever you want. To everyone knows you're going to be extra careful about washing your hands when you come back to the meal. Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, I disagree. So everybody knows I'm going to wash my hands when I come back, that I'm going to be particular about it. Nothing. We for sure would have said this today. Everybody. I really hope everybody washes their hands after they go to the washroom, and therefore it seems to be from the Gemara the name of Rav Nachman, that this isn't a concern by Lishtos. New Mishnah. The Mishnah writes 2/3 of the way down on Lamed Amud Aleph, Ein adam nichnas la'azar la'avoda afilu tahor an she'itbal. Even if you're already in a pure state of tahara, the halacha is that if you're coming to the azara or avoda, so we're talking about kohanim, you have to go to the mikvah. And we know, of course, that in the Kohen Gadol is Chamesh Tfilos v'Asor Kiddushin Tovel Kohen Gadol Mekadosh Bo Bayom. He has five mikvahs and 10 Kiddush Yadayim B'Raglayim, and he's going to be Tovel on that day when he gets there. V'chulan B'Kodesh Al Beis HaParva, on the southern wall. That's the wall where the menorah was. On the southern wall, that's really further out. That's the Heichal. On the outer walls of the Azara, there was a room called the Beis HaParva. And that room was Kodesh, Chutz Mizu Bilvad, except for this very one where you are going to the mikvah before you get to the Azara, which makes sense. You don't want to walk into the Azara without first being tar. So you have to go to the mikvah before you show up for work. Parsu Sad and Shel Boots Beino Levein Ha'am, and they would set up a sheet of linen between him and the people. We'll discuss this not tonight, but over the coming days. To ask the Gemara the basic question: Shalu es ben Zoma Tefila Zo Lama. Why is it that we need this mikvah, this tefillah, right before he comes into the Azar? So it says the Gemara as follows, at the opening of the Gemara, 8 lines from the bottom on Lamed Amud Aleph. Shalu es ben Zoma tefillah zolama, what's the reason? Amar lahem, so Ben Zoma responded. And here we're going to see a big machlokes in the Tanoim. Ben Zoma was of the opinion that this was a chiyuv deoraisa, and he gives a gzeira shava. And he gives a kal v'chomer. When the Kohen Gadol is switching from one holy room to another, going from one room where not having gone to the mikvah would have earned you a consequence of kares, to another room where not having gone to the mikvah would earn you a consequence of kares, and there tone tefillah. So then, certainly, if you're coming from outside the mikdash, hamishane michol lekodesh. If you're coming from outside the mikdash into the mikdash, umimakom she'ein anush kares lemakom she'anush kares. You're going from the less severe to the more severe. The Gemara doesn't say this, but it should say alachas kama v'kama kol shekain ben kol shekain kal v'chomer. It's so obvious. Eino din sheton tefillah. A beautiful argument by Ben Zoma. It's obvious. Pashat. There's chiyuvei kares here. You got to go to. What's the question? Like from his perspective, what's the question? The more strange sheet is this one. Rabbi Yehuda, 3 lines from the bottom. Rabbi Yehuda Omer srach tefillah hizu. No, this is srach. Srach tefillah means that it's a din derabbanan. See, they're diametrically opposed shitas, where he says that there is no isur doraisa of entering that space without going into the mikvah. What does that mean? I should say a little differently. There is no chiyuv to go to the mikvah before you walk into that space. Because remember what we said in our Mishnah. The case was you were already tahor. So now the question goes back on the Tanakama. Ben Zoma is going to say that the reason why we have to wash is because you're tameh. You're not tameh. It says you're tahor. Yet he holds it's a din d'oraisa to go to the mikvah. Ben Zoma says you're already tahor. It's okay. It's good to go to the mikvah. It's a din d'rabbanan, but it's not a din d'oraisa. This is their machlokes. Srach tefillah hizo k'dei sheyizkor tuma yishana shebiyado v'yifrosh. We say, yeah, you should make a habit as you walk into the holy areas of the mikdash to go to the mikvah, because in case, you're right, I'm taka tameh. Whatever it is, and maybe you'll remember, and then you'll separate from having done something wrong. So now the Gemara wants to know, What is the nafkamina between these two shitas? Ben Zoma holds that there's a din deoraisa to go to the mikvah even though you're tahor prior to entering the azara. The sheet of Rabbi Yehuda is that it's only a din derabanan. Asks the Gemara last three words on laman avanat b'ma'ka miflage. What is the machlokas? Says the Gemara be'achule avoda kamiflage. What does that mean? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi dibur hamaschel be'achule avoda im lo taval shachris ve'avad. We're talking about the implications of this. If let's say it comes time for shachris and you don't go to the mikvah. Leben Zoma, who holds that it's a din deoraisa, as Rashi says explicitly, dibur machel leben Zoma. Leben Zoma, Rashi says the Omar deoraisahi shaharei nitan kal v'chomer lidaresh hav yavodasa mechuleles, because you're missing a key critical component. You have a din deoraisa, you have to go to the mikvah before your avoda. So because it's a din deoraisa to go to the mikvah before your avoda, it's a psul in the avoda. So that's what he says. The Ben Zoma mechel avoda. It right uproots the whole thing. It makes it chulin. You violated it. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, holds it's a din derabbanan lo machil avoda. So asks the Gemara, will the Ben Zoma be machil? Does he really hold that it's le'ikuva? Does he hold that this going to the mikvah is going to be really problematic? Asks the Gemara about Tanya. Kohen gadol shelo taval v'lo kidesh bein beged lebeged uvein avoda le'avoda avodaso kshera. Ben Zoma, you can't say that it's le'ikuva. We have an express Mishnah here. It's explicitly, it tells us exactly what's going on, and it's absolutely kosher. Let's finish this brisa. The brisa continues. Echad kohen gadol ve'echad kohen hedyod shelo kidesh yadav v'raglav shachris v'avad avoda avodaso psula. So that's by kidesh yadav v'raglav. But by tvila, the first part of this brisa, we see that avodaso kshera. So how can Ben Zoma tell me on the top line of this page that Ben Zoma mechil avoda, that if you don't go to the mikvah because of the kal v'chomer, which requires you to go, it's mechil avoda, ruins your avoda, you're wrong. We have a brisa that doesn't agree with you. Ella, therefore, the Gemara pivots and gives a second explanation as to what their machlokas is actually about. Ella lemekam be'asei kamiflage. All they're talking about is whether or not there's a mitzvah saseh. LeBen Zoma koi be'aseh. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, lo koi be'aseh, as we was indicated from the pashtus of the machloket that we saw in the bottom of Lamed and Aleph, that they're arguing about whether it's a din derabanan or a din deoraisa. Says the Gemara, umi isle Rabbi Yehuda hai svara. Does Rabbi Yehuda really hold of this? Thank you again to Rashi. I had no idea what this was talking about. Look to our left, a couple of lines up. Dibur hamaschel umi isle Rabbi Yehuda hach svara. What svara? Does Rabbi Yehuda really hold, as Rashi highlights, Dimas Nisan, Shayukol Nechnasan Lazar Tzrichin Tefila, even midrabanan? Did he really require that the people who would come to the mikdash, that they'd have to have this tefila, even midrabanan? As says the Gemara as follows. Tanya, the Brisa writes, Mitzora tovel ve'omed b'shar nikanor. When a mitzora wants to come in to get his kapara, bohin yado, remember he stands to shar nikanor, his toes and oil, all the things that he does. Fine. That's a sheet to the Tanakama. What does Rabbi Yehuda say? Eino tzarach tefila. Why not? Shekvar taval mi ba'erev. So that seems to be a stira within Rabbi Yehuda. You said he's obligated to go to the mikvah midrabanan as he approaches. Yet here we say not as he approaches, as long as he did it even the night before. Says the Gemara, yeah, but that's different. Hahu kidetani taima shekvar taval mi ba'erev. Because the night before he went to the mikvah. As long as he was careful, then he knows that he's still tahor. So therefore, it's not a requirement at all by the case of the mitzora. So says the Gemara, it's such a ridiculous question. With the karila, my karila, the person who asked this question, what were they really asking? This couldn't have been it. The answer was sitting right in front of our noses. It said in there that he went to the mikvah a little bit earlier at night. So what? Of course, that's why Rabbi Yehuda would say in this case he doesn't need to go to the mikvah again. It's not a steer in Rabbi Yehuda. So says the Gemara, you're absolutely right. You picked up on a good point. The question that we had was really not the question we wanted to ask. It was meant to lead to the following question. 1/3 of the way down, a little bit more, Lamed Amud Beis. Says the Gemara, Mishum de kaboy lemirma achrisi alei. This new brisa that we just learned, the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, which says Eino tzarach tefila shekvar tavel mi ba'erev, that the mitzora does not have to do another tefillah right when he gets there, as long as he went to the mikvah the night before. That conflicts with the following brisa, lishkas hamitzorayin, that in this lishka, in this room that was specific to mitzorayin, shesha mitzorayin tovlin, that's where the mitzorayin go to be tova. So then Rabbi Yehuda has a very strong language. Check this out. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, lo mitzorayin bilvad amru, ela kol adam. What does that sound like? That every single person is obligated when they get to the Beis HaMikdash to go to the mikvah. So this sounds like a stira. You have the previous brisa, which is 12 lines from the bottom in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, where he says Eino tzarach tefila shekvar tavel mi ba'erev. And then we have this one that says not only do mitzorayin have to, everybody has to go to the mikvah. So then you have a stira within Rabbi Yehuda's. Answers the Gemara a whole slew of answers, and this will bring us to the end of today. Lo kashya, hadetavil, hadelo tavil. One's talking about where he was tovel the night before, and one's talking about where he wasn't tovel the night before. In a case where he was tovel the night before, so that's the first version of Rabbi Yehuda. He doesn't really have to go to the mikvah. The second version of Rabbi Yehuda and the Lishkas Mitzorayin, that's where he didn't go to the mikvah the night before, and therefore he's obligated to go. So says the Gemara, what are you talking about? Either lo tavil, if he didn't go to the mikvah before the night before, you got a big problem. Herav shemesh. You don't become tahor until you have a sunset. So you'd have to go to the mikvah before the sunset the night before, and then he doesn't have to go to the mikvah anew. That I totally understand. But lo tavil, says the Gemara halfway down, herav shemesh boy. He won't be tahor by morning to do his avoda, to make it his avoda, to get his kapara. It won't work, because we need the sun to set before he's holy enough to step into Shar Nikanor. So it doesn't work. Says the Gemara, pivots and gives another answer. Really, you're right. Really, the Mitzora went to the mikvah before Shkia the night before. We're good. What's the difference between Rabbi Yehuda and the Brisa on the 10 lines down, and Rabbi Yehuda and the Brisa 15 lines down? So it says the Gemara, one person, in one case, he went to the mikvah the night before, but he had hesach hadas. He doesn't know what happened. He had a crazy night. He couldn't remember what happened. And the other one was lo hesach hadas. It says the Gemara, if that's what happened, if he had hesach hadas, you've got a much bigger problem. Hazas shlishi v'shvi'i ba'ei. If this person had a hesach hadas, if a mitzora had hesach hadas, he has to start the 7 days over. So you can't explain the distinctions between Rabbi Yehuda by saying one was where there was hesach hadas and one was when there wasn't. Because if you had a guy who has a hesach hadas as a mitzora, he's starting over, and he'll need another hazah shlishi and shvi. That's a big problem. How do we know this? To Amar Rav Dustay. Bar Matan, Amar Rav Yochanan, hesach hadas, tzarach hazah shlishi v'shvi. So that answer can't work either. By the way, as a parenthesis, whenever a woman asks a shaila during Sheva Nakim, let's say that she has a bedika cloth that's questionable. So the halacha is she should not have a hesach hadas in her Sheva Nakim. That's a big shaila in the postgame. What if a woman sees a bedika cloth, she thinks she knows, and she's like, forget it. Get it. I'm not wearing levanim anymore. I'm going to wear colored undergarments. I'm a nida. I'll try again tonight. Whatever. That's a big shaila in the postgame, because we're not allowed to have a hesach hadas in Sheva Nakim. Very similar halacha by the Mitzvah as well. So therefore, this answer does not work to explain the different shitas of Rabbi Yehuda. And let's try one more time, maybe 2 more times. Says the Gemara, Ella, you're right. Really, he went to the mikvah the night before, and he had herav shemesh, and there was no hesach hadas. The lokashya had tavil al das bias mikdash, had lo tavil al das bias mikdash. However, when he went to the mikvah, he did not have in mind that he was going to go to the Beis HaMikdash the next day. And therefore, that's the Bryce about Lishkas Mitzorah. Therefore, when he shows up, he has to jump in the mikvah to make sure that he's tahor, because he didn't go to the mikvah for this purpose. And the other shita says the other way, had lo tavil al das bias hamikdash, and therefore, I'm sorry, the other way around. Had tavil al das bias hamikdash. That's the first version of Rabbi Yehuda. Because he went to the mikvah with das to go into the mikdash, he therefore doesn't have to go to the mikvah again. And had the lo tavil, the one that's the brisa that starts with Lishkas HaMitzorayin, so there had the lo tavil al das bias mikdash, he has to go to the mikvah again, because his intentions when he went to the mikvah were not about the mikdash. Last approach for the night, the ibay sema tani lo mitzorayin amru ela kol adam. What does that mean? We said there was a stira in the two Rabbi Yehudas. So in the Rabbi Yehuda that speaks about Lishkas Mitzorayin, this brisa is a little more than a third of the way down. He changes the language of Rabbi Yehuda. Instead of saying Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Lo Mitzorayin Bilvad Amru, Ela Kol Adam, it should say Lo Mitzorayin Amru. Take out the word Bilvad. Namely, Mitzorayin don't have to go to the mikvah. And therefore, the two sheets of Rabbi Yehuda are the same. Tomorrow night, Amir Tashem will pick up with Ravina. Just one scheduling note that we'll be doing. So we have Shabbos, it's going to be regular. Sunday, it's Erev Yontif, so we don't learn. However, we're going to learn Sunday's daf at 11:30 at night. For that one daf, it's before all the other shiurim. We'll learn Sunday's blot, and then Monday and Tuesday, those blot will be an hour before minutes. Probably should make them shorter because it's not a blot and a half. We'll make it 43 minutes. Okay, wishing you all a beautiful night. What?
So you can do Daf Yomi all night.